So, for instance, if the government decides, we're going to put a seawall here and this is where it's going to end, that's going to channel some of the sea level rise and some of the storm surges onto other property owners. It really does mirror what's happening now with the flooding cases. So, in the wake of Hurricane Harvey, there's now litigation about, well, sure, the water falling wasn't within the government's control, but once it started to open dams and change how the flooding regime worked, it basically picked and chose. So we're going to protect these property owners, and to do so, we're going to flood you. And to what extent does the government bear some compensation requirement for that? Lucas, particularly in the cases where the effects of climate change influenced by government decisions wipe out property owners, can be an important part of this story. I assume most of you are familiar with Lucas. The basic holding is that it's a wipeout rule. Whenever the government takes away all economically beneficial use, it has to pay you for that under a per se rule unless the restriction being imposed is a part of the title. It's one of the background rules of property. That obviously could have some effect on property owners affected by sea level rise. So one of the examples of the types of regulations that are starting to become more common and will likely be much more common as sea level rise increases are the managed retreat regulations, where government will declare that this area we expect will be affected by sea level rise, so we're going to go ahead and restrict development now on the basis of that potential risk. Like Professor Butler mentioned, I think there's a really significant risk of the government acting too soon and taking away property rights too early under that risk, and compensation can help mitigate that problem. So, for instance, you might have some property owners who don't much care that the home they build today won't be able to stand where it is in 50 years. You imagine a retirement couple that has dreamed of and saved for decades in the hopes of having a beachfront home to live out their days. For them, it might not matter that in 60 years, long after they're gone, the house will have to be moved. But the time that they get to enjoy it can be extremely valuable. I think the best way to think about the property rights issues in this case is that the pre-existing risk of sea level rise is part of the compensation requirement. That you might have a property that's only usable for a certain period of time, but that time that you can use it is extremely valuable. And if the government takes away your right to make all economically beneficial use in that time, that's a taking, and it should be a per se taking under the Lucas rule.